to this episode of the Seconds Count podcast. My name's Paul, your host, and I'm joined with Amy, who's going to introduce herself now.
Hello, my name's Amy. I'm a paramedic working out of Exeter, and I've been qualified for 3 years.
That's it. So, obviously, you guys probably recognise Amy. We've had her on before, publishing a Pocket Paramedic book, but today we're going to talk about herself for a bit. So, Amy, what first got you into paramedics or paramedicine?
You know what? If I'm being completely honest, it wasn't my first choice, so to speak. I knew I wanted to go into medicine, but I wasn't sure what aspect of medicine. So before I joined university, I was taking part in some first aid courses, doing something quite similar to St. John. And then I realised doing some of the events. So I was on the side being a first aider for like boxing events and other kind of stuff. And then I realised I really enjoyed not knowing what I was going to go to, not knowing what injuries I was going to see. And I really, really loved the pre-hospital work. And then from then it was like a light bulb moment. Oh my gosh, I could be a paramedic. And yeah, the rest is kind of history, really.
So, you mentioned that you did a lot of like event work and stuff. Did you find that previous knowledge helped in university at all?
Yes, it gave me a really good sort of running head start to be able to, as silly as it sounds, know how to communicate with patients when they're already quite stressed out, whether they've broken their ankle or in a lot of pain. You know, a lot of the time we go there to people's worst day. So if we can make it slightly better, I think I'm a big fan. So it really helped give me a head start when I was going to university.
So, obviously, you went to university like myself. What kind of advice would you give to someone who's starting first year? Obviously, the new first years went back literally a couple of months back. What would be the first thing you said to them about the next 3 years of their life and how to cope with it?
There's quite a few points I'd have actually. So if you can get involved in first aid events similar to what I did, 100% please go for it, volunteer and just get that hands-on experience with those low acuity patients. I would say start learning your basic anatomy and physiology because that plays a really big part into the role when you're a paramedic. So Ross and Wilson is a really good textbook, but there's loads of resources online, and Geeky Medics is really good as well. So start learning them, start learning your basic sort of observation parameters for normal heart rate, blood pressure. Again, that's going to give you a running start. And yeah, just try and get involved, talk to as many people as you want. You can learn lots through history taking, but 90% of the job is being able to talk to people. So if you've got really good bedside manner, you can talk to all kind of patients, whether they're pediatric, elderly, someone who might be intoxicated. I think that's really going to give you a head start. And if you can, start your C1 early. So get your C1 theory done, try and get it done early, because when you eventually qualify, you don't want all the additional stresses of trying to get your C1 when you've got your blue light driving, as well as all the pressures of getting a job. So it's just the extra thing just to take that weight off of your shoulders. It's quite a few tips, but
I wish I had that advice because I've still not got my C1. It's in the works, but it's been that much of a struggle getting through uni. Then I've just put it on the back burner. But April qualified in April, hopefully, fingers crossed. So it'll get done before then. Fingers crossed. Anyway,
fingers crossed.
so obviously with the paramedic role, we don't know what we're going to. A job comes in, we have a brief description, but ideally we don't know what's going on. So how do you cope with mentally with that? How do you prepare for not knowing what you're going to? So jobs come in, you're on your way. There's very limited information. What's the first thing you tell yourself, or what's the first thing you do?
Yeah, so I quite like the mental model of the 0 point survey, and that's something that I include in my book here. And it's just a way of prepping yourself and your crewmates before going into a situation. So obviously you'll have limited description on the MDT as to what job you're going to. And from that, part of the 0 point survey is verbalizing what it could be that you're walking into. So what are the potential differentials? I might start talking to my crewmate if it is like a cardiac arrest that we're going to, right, this is my role that I'm going to do. I want you to do this when we go in. So if we are greeted with an arrest when we arrive, we all know our roles. There's no wasted time or communication. And I think always take it with a pinch of salt, because quite a few times, as I'm sure you've experienced, something comes through that sounds very big and exciting and you arrive and it's nothing. And then there'll be other occasions where it sounds like an injury fall and actually you've got a major silver trauma because it wasn't just the fall, it was top to bottom down the flight of stairs. So I think take everything with a pinch of salt, go into it with an open mind, but more importantly, you know, have good communication with your crewmates. Your crewmates can make and break your shift. And I think if you are struggling with the job that you've been to, if you can have a chat with your crewmates, that can really help with your mental health sort of further down the line, knowing that you felt supported.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, he's right in saying like I tend to just as soon as a job comes through, if I'm a bit like, oh, this sounds like a bad job, JR Calc straight away, and I'm just scrolling all the way to that job reading because then I feel like you're prepared. Then obviously you prepare for the worst, and then hopefully the worst isn't there.
yeah,
Um,
start at the bottom, worst case scenario, then work your way down
yeah,
when you get
and
there.
9 times out of 10, it's never as bad as it sounds on the MDT. Like I think we had one the other day. It was Cat One pregnant, screaming for help when we got there. It was an old gentleman on the floor who'd fallen out of bed.
Wow, quite the difference.
Which we're running in with the map packs, expected it like an imminent birth, and it was an old gentleman who just rolled out of bed. Which for
Yeah.
all of us, it was a sigh of relief, but you just don't know with the MDT. It could literally be something completely different.
Yeah, definitely.
Speaking of,
And for the same with JR Calc, I'll often screenshot. So if we go to page for age, or there's lots of different things and different tabs I could go through, I might screenshot the different tabs for, say, what size OPA or like a child's normal heart rate and stuff. Maybe some drug dosages as well. So then if I go in, I don't have to waste time flicking through JR Calc. I've got it already there and ready to go, really.
that's the thing, I think as a student, especially like first or second year, you feel like you have to remember everything, but you can't remember every obs for different, like page for age, you can't remember everything. Like adults, you can kind of have an idea, but I don't know what the best rate for a 3-year-old should be. I can look it up and then it's known. But I think a lot of students do put a lot of pressure on themselves, especially in first and second year, that they need to know everything. And I was speaking to pocket clinician on one of the other podcasts about this, and he was similar on the same man as me. It was you can't know everything. It takes years, and you do need, like I say, like a guide, like you offer your logbook, and he offers his pocket clinician. You need that guide. You need something in your pocket to look at and think, hang on, what am I doing? And JR Calc is great, but sometimes you haven't got the time to look at JR Calc. You just need a quick reference. Um, Speaking of jobs, can you remember any sort of memorable job that you want to share, or any job that you thought, wow, that's a learning curve, or something that you can look back on and think, oh, I need to go away and think about this? Anything you want to share?
I think so many jobs spring to mind. And I think one thing I'd like to reiterate to students and anybody is this is practicing medicine. You are constantly learning. There will be jobs that catch you out, and there will be times where your bandwidth is so stretched you don't have that extra thinking space. And this is where I like when I work with my crewmates, I'd say, we're working as a team because while they speak to the family, they might catch like an extra bit of information that I might have missed. I remember when I had my first student with me, we went to a patient who was complaining of a little bit of shortness of breath. And as we're going through the patient history, it sounded very much like he had pleuritic chest pain. He'd had the classic, he'd had a cold for 3 or 4 days. I think listening to his chest, it sounded like he had some crackles. He wasn't desaturating, but everything was leading towards an ongoing chest infection. And he said, look, I'm really sorry. My wife had a little bit of a panic. She's cold for you guys. I'm sure I've just got a chest infection. Obviously, having a student with me, I said, look, he's got a little bit of chest tightness. I'm sure it's just pleuritic pain. Let's do a 12 lead, rule it out. But I was very much going down the management at home, referral to GP kind of thing. We did the 12 lead, and lo and behold, we had ST elevation and AVR and global ST depression in 8 leads. So I was like, oh, we've got a change of plan. So he was very, very quickly moved on to CCU, who did accept. And I think about 70 or 80% of his heart was occluded, and there was a chance he might have died on the table in CCU. But he wasn't clammy, he wasn't pale, he wasn't your classic sign. So I think, obviously, luckily we caught it. We didn't leave that chap at home. But my advice would be to remember patients can have more than one thing going on. and it's just worth dotting the I's, crossing all the T's. And I think that was a really good job to show not to be complacent. Don't just grab onto the red herring where he's saying it's a chest infection and we're going along those lines, because there very well could be something else going on.
You touched on it. I do think as like paramedics, you walk into a room and you look at something, you think it's this, and then even as a student, like you latch onto that one thing and think it's this, and like you just proved, then it can be something way different. And luckily you caught it, and luckily because some people might have just gone chest infection, refer to GP. They wouldn't even have done a 12 lead, which that poor gentleman would have been left at home. So I do think you're right. We just do need to cross the T's and to dot the I's. Any other jobs that you can think of that have been a bit like shocking, or jobs that you look back on and think I need to go away and think how I would manage that again? Because I know after some jobs I look at and think I would do something totally different. Like literally last night we had a STEMI, and for some reason I put the pads on before doing a 12 lead. Because you walk in and you see this gentleman, he's grey, he's white, it's a witness collapse. Straight away I'm thinking STEMI. So I've done a 4 lead, it's come up straight away, and I thought pads on. Instead of just doing a 12 lead and actually identifying the STEMI, pads were on before that. And then my mentor was looking at me like, what are you doing? I was like, don't know why I'm doing that, but it's done now. She was like, just carry on like you was. So is
Yeah.
there any job that other jobs you can think
I can understand that
wouldn't?
though, because that's your pattern recognition. You recognize this patient looks like a patient I've had previously who was a STEMI. They look really unwell. They're quite high risk of going into an arrest. So getting prepared. But like you said, sometimes it's just referring back to that systematic approach. But I can totally understand where you're coming from. Um, yeah, I think it's hard to pinpoint one, but there's definitely been jobs in the past where I've had to sit back and reflect on things, whether it's necessarily what we've done clinically, or if it's say quite a big incident that we've been to and we've been patient focused to the point where actually we could have got the family a lot more involved at that time. I think quite a few jobs I've been to, I've reflected back on and thought, well, if that we probably should have had a family liaison a lot earlier on in that incident. We did obviously get that later on when we had the resources to allow. But I think a big take home for me is family will never remember what you've done clinically. You could do the best job ever clinically, and the family won't remember that at all, but they will remember how you made them feel, and they will remember if you explained everything, if they knew what was going on. So I think there's been, without naming a job in particular, there's been a few incidents where I've gone home and thought I probably should have just spared a couple of seconds, speak to the family, where I think I've been quite task focused on managing the patient, thinking that's obviously in family's best interest, but I think it's just having that liaison with them, really. But it's jobs like that that's really helped inspire my book. I'm a really big fan of reflective practice, and a huge part of Paralog is reflecting on the jobs that you've been to and see how you can improve, not just clinically but socially, and involving everyone. So yeah, sorry I've not really given you a particular incident, but I think in general that's something I've often quite reflected on.
Even for like history taking, I think involving the family knows the patient more than we do. We've only just met this patient minutes ago, so involving the family with this patient's care, you get a better history. I find like I turn to the family quite a lot when gaining history, because if the patient's really unwell, they're not in the mindset to give you a backstory. They just want to sit there and just get better. Whereas the family know, they've been there longer than we have. They know the patient in and out. If it's like a partner or family member who's quite close, they're going to know a lot more than we'll ever know. So I agree with you completely. Involving the family should be a really big part of what we do. You've mentioned your book then. Obviously, we spoke about your book a little bit when I met you at the Emergency Service Show, but is there anything else you want to talk about the book, or anything you want to plug about the book? Because it is an amazing book. It is getting out there. It's with the College of Paramedics at the moment. A lot of people I've bumped into on the road have your book already. Um,
That's
yeah.
great to hear.
So, can you just talk about your book for us a little bit?
Yeah, so just a quick summary. This is my paramedic logbook, or Paralog for short. and it's the book that I wish I had when I was a student. So once I'd qualified, I'd reflected quite heavily on my time as a student and how everything was feeling now as newly qualified and going into those jobs by myself. And I think, to be honest, everyone creates their own version of this book. With all their little notes and guides that they want in their pocket. But I just wanted something official that I could write in, scribble in, gain feedback from my mentor, and so on and so forth. And then I knew Gary Strong while I was in uni, and I approached him and said, I've got this really good idea. Just for a fill in, Gary Strong is the CPD lead for the College of Paramedics. So I approached him and said, can I just get the College of Paramedics stamp on this book just to say that you approve it? And then it might help me sell a few more copies. But he really, really liked the book. And we then started to work together to develop it. And then, yeah, the college wanted to print and publish it. So it's not just endorsed, but at the moment you can buy it on the College of Paramedics website, soon to be Royal College of Paramedics. And yeah, it's brilliant. The other author, when we were writing the book, he had been a practice educator. So with him being a practice educator for a couple of years with his own students and me having just qualified, we were able to kind of hit the book from both angles. So it's got a little bit of everything. It's got smart action plans for you to log at the beginning of the year. It's got clinical skills checklists. It's got the instant logs, lots of reflective cycles. So I mentioned earlier the 0 point survey, but we've also got Gibbs and IFEAR, which I think IFEAR was created by one of the lecturers in UE. But we've got a mental health checklist as well, because that is so important. And I think now everything's changed quite a bit to reflect on how important mental health is and looking after yourself, because we've been quite stoic as an ambulance service and it's not really worked, not talking about things. So I think that I really wanted to get a mental health section in there to help students. And then right at the back we've got a nice chunky handover section. So we've got bits on SBAR, ATMIST, IMIST, AMBO, which is quite a good one, which I think I use quite a lot, as well as methane and 10-second triage, which is obviously our new major incident triage tool at the back. And I've probably missed out a few, but that is a general summary of what's in this book. So it really does have a little bit of everything. And it's quite exciting making it. I really enjoyed it. I brought the prototypes out on the road, so I was testing it with all of my colleagues who were probably sick of hearing about it. But yeah, we had lots of prototypes, worked through to really fine tooth comb what was in the book. Lots of people liked it, and we've tried to make it as dyslexia friendly as possible, making everything really nice and colourful with bold text and CPD logs and stuff. So we've tried our best to make it nice. And if you are a member of the college, it's £9.99 for a book. And if you're a non-member, it's £14.99. Again, because when you're a student, there is so many things that you're told to buy and things can get ridiculous. So we're trying to keep it as cheap as we can while still covering printing and shipping costs and stuff, just to try and make it available to as many students as possible.
I like the obviously the handover page is such a big thing, especially for, I don't know if you do it, just a bit of tissue paper where you're writing your handover notes on isn't the best. I know we have the iPad, but sometimes when you just run it in, like last night, it took that STEM me to PPCI, and I'd written all my like lovely handover notes on the ECG. But as soon as I've walked in, the consultants took the ECG off me, and now I've got no handover notes. So it's all memory, and it just doesn't look as good or sound as good when it's off your memory without, reading something. So that is a really good thing, especially looking at the book. That is one of the things I would as a student still benefit from. Obviously you've been qualified for a while now. What was that jump from student to NQP like? How did you cope with no longer being a student and then being basically the adult? How did you cope? What did you say to yourself day one in the job? I'm no longer the student. I've got no one helping. How did you? Because I'm getting close. I'm getting close to that end stage now. So for me, this is quite a big question as well. And I know there's a lot of students who will be in the same boat as me. How do you cope with that change in everything?
Yeah. So I will put it out there, you will cope, you will be absolutely fine. But I'd be lying to say if I walked in really confident on my first shift, I was absolutely terrified. And I think it's normal. And I think if you're nervous and you're scared of your first shift, which everybody is, it just shows that you're a good clinician because it shows that you care. So I think don't psych yourself out if you think, oh my gosh, I'm terrified, because everybody is. It's completely, completely normal. And I think I must have just been incredibly nervous on my first shift. It does feel like a big jump. However, when you do that first big job and there is no room to think, and you just jump in, you do what needs to get done, you take the patient into hospital, it's only at the end when you take a breathing space, you realise that your mental wasn't just behind you and you did everything yourself. And then that is such a nice confidence booster. Because I think when you're in the middle ground between, oh, this patient's a little bit unwell, but there's a lot of thinking room, and then that can be where you might overthink some things. But I felt oddly enough reassured after my first big job when I qualified, because I suddenly realised I can do this. There is a reason why I've qualified. You know, you've worked really, really hard for the last 3 years. You've got your degree. They've not just given you the degree for the sake of it. You know, you've worked hard. You deserve it. You've earned it. It's just a little bit scary taking that first leap. And not so some people have a nightmare first shift, some people don't. So fingers crossed, it's a nice one to ease you in.
That's the thing. I've got colleagues who, while on placement, you don't get sent to anything bad, and we always joke with them, saying like the first day one you're going to get everything. Literally everything's going to come through the door day one. As a student, he's had like my close friend, he's had nothing. He's had no cardiac arrest. He's had no really really bad jobs. He's had no even hard jobs. It's just the usual standard job. So we were joking the other day saying you will literally day one you'll have major incidents, methane report, 10-second triage, the lot. But hopefully Lee doesn't, and hopefully we get through it together.
Yeah. I mean,
We're coming to the
most
end.
trusts have like a really good supportive process to get you in.
Yeah,
I think on my first shift, it came through as a 6-year-old anaphylaxis, which I was absolutely terrified of. But luckily, they were absolutely fine when we went in, which was just such a relief.
like I think Peds jobs hit differently. Like we had my first day back on placement, so I went back on the 10th for this block, and first job was a 3-year-old anaphylaxis. Luckily, we got there and it wasn't anaphylaxis. It was I think it was just a chest infection. He was in a nursery as well, but honestly, as soon as I seen 3-year-old, it was oh no, because children it's just different when you get a pediatric job. It is. It's really I don't know if you're the same, but it is. It hits differently.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
I think it's understandable, but if you stick to your ABCs, your primary survey, work through it methodically, you'll be absolutely fine.
yeah. So we're coming to the end of the podcast now. Is there any social media that you want to blog? Obviously, quite big on TikTok and Instagram. Where can people find you? Where can people find your book as well?
Yeah, thank you. So the book you can buy on the College of Paramedics website. So if you type in www.collegeofparamedics.co.uk and head on over to their shop, you can buy the book from there. And I'm a mixture of paralog or paramedic log on on the social media pages. I am bigger on TikTok than I am any of the other ones. So on TikTok I am para_log, and then Instagram I'm paramedic.log, and Facebook I'm paralog. So I'm a slight mix across the services, but
I'll make sure to tag each one on under the bottom of this video anyway, so people can find you.
thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on, Amy. It's been lovely speaking to you again. Hopefully, we can see each other again at the. Obviously, you're going to be going to the emergency service show next
Yes,
year, I assume. Obviously,
definitely.
you'll probably see my face walking around again as like last time, so we might be able to catch up then. But thank you so much for coming on this morning, and have a lovely, lovely rest of the day.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Oh, bye now.